Good morning, Shubhodaya to everyone. This is Nitin Sridhar from Advaita Academy. I think there was some technical error on our side, so audio did not play in the opening ambigram. Anyways, I welcome you all to a new series of talks that we are starting today with Manjushree Hegde. And last time when we invited her for Weekend with Wisdom and she spoke on the different darshanas, we received many feedback, many requests from people asking us to saying that the time was not enough, that requesting us to organize more on the topics on individual darshanas, and they wanted to hear more. So, and they wanted to hear more from Manjushree. And I'm very happy that after much convincing on my part, she finally agreed to do this session. And this talk series is titled as Shad Darshanas, Six Approaches to Reality. And in today's session, Manjushree Hegde will be speaking on Nyaya, the Indian School of Logic and Epistemology. Just a short introduction to Manjushree, who has been a very good friend and a very good scholar I look up to. And so that for the benefit of those who are not aware of her and her work, she is currently pursuing PhD in Advaita Vedanta from IIT Madras, and she is a guest professor. She was previously, I think, assistant professor. Now she is working as guest professor at Amrita Darshanam, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham. Her primary area of specialization is Vyakarana and Advaita Vedanta, which she has studied traditionally under Dr. Pushpa Dikshit and Sri Ashwath Narayan Avadhani, respectively. And a very warm welcome to you, Manjushree. And we, on behalf of all the Advaita Academy, I am very happy to have you here, very glad to have you here. So, without further much ado, I request you to start the session. Viewers, if you whatever questions you have, post it on Q&A box, and last 10-15 minutes, 20 minutes, uh, Manjushri will take up those questions and answer those questions. Please start your session.
Thank you so much, Nitin, for the invitation, and a very special thank you to everybody who is tuned in. Um, Honestly speaking, I was not personally, I was not very happy with how I presented the different philosophical schools in my previous talk. I genuinely felt that I could have presented it in a more simple way. So that is what I want to do today. So I'm very happy to be doing this series of talks, primarily also because as popular as Vedanta is, the other systems are not so much. This is a very vast subject, and my intention is that the audience get a feel of the length and breadth and depth of this subject. I've structured my talk into three sections that hopefully captures all the aspects of it. Honestly, I've had a very difficult time deciding what to tell and what to leave out. So let's see how it goes. I'll share my screen with you, my PPT. Just give me one. I'll start with a brief history of this discipline. See, Nyāyaśāstra is not a uniform block with specific answers to specific questions. It is a discipline that has evolved through the centuries, through the debates within the tradition, outside the tradition. So the way a Prachina Nayayika will answer certain questions will be different to how a Navya-Nyaya will answer the same questions. So I want to talk a little bit about this evolution within the tradition and the prominent figures who participated in the debates and contributed to what it has become now. So I'll start with a brief history of how this discipline evolved. Um, the earliest phase of Nyaya was mainly concerned with the study of reasoning. and the art of philosophic debate. It was a kind of Vada Shastra, a scientific treatise on disputation. The very first sutra of Akshapada Gautama's Nyāyaśāstra, I have put it on the screen. Pramana Prameya Samshaya Prayojana Drishtanta Siddhantavayava Tarka Nirnaya Vada Jalpa Vitanda Hetvabhasa Chala Jati Nigrahasthananam Tattvajnanat niśreyasa. This is the first sutra of the Nyaya Sutras. This sort of determines the content of the entire text. It is a list of 16 padarthas. Gautama has given a list of 16 padarthas and stated that the right knowledge about these 16 terms will lead to niśreyasa. Tattvajnanat niśreyasadhigamaha. The 16 terms are pramana, means of right knowledge; prameya, object of right knowledge; samshaya, doubt; prayojana, purpose; drishtanta, a familiar instance; siddhanta, the established tenet; avayava, the members; tarka, confutation; nirnaya, ascertainment; vada, discussion; jalpa, wrangling; vitanda, scabble; hetvabhasa, fallacy; chala is quibble; jati, futility; and nigrahasthana is the occasion for rebuke. Look at the last few terms that are included in this list. Vada, jalpa, vitanda, hetvabhasa, chala, jati, nigrahasthana. Vada means honest discussion, honest debate where both sides, both parties are only seeking the truth. They're interested in only through such a debate, the truth will emerge. Vade vade jayate tattvabodhaha. Gautama actually writes, Vimrishya paksha pratipakshabhyam arthavadharanam nirnayaha. It means that you can come to a conclusion only by examining the paksha and the pratipaksha. It is through an honest philosophical debate, through vada, that the true nature of a fact can be ascertained. Jalpa, on the other hand, this is the type of debate where winning is the only goal. By whatever method, fair or foul, without rules or regulations, winning, not establishing the truth. Winning is the goal. Such a debate is called jalpa. So each side furnishes unjustifiable arguments and reasons with full confidence to defeat their opponents. Nilakantha Dikshita has captured this very funnily. He writes na bhetavyam na bodhavyam na shravyam vadino vachaha jhatiti prativaktavyam sabhayam vijigishabhi. In a gathering, if you wish to win a debate, do not think of the consequences. Do not try to understand what the other party is trying to say. Do not even listen to your opponents. Na bodhavyam na shravyam. Keep speaking at a fast pace. Jhatiti prativaktavyam, and you will win. So, funny verse, of course. Uchchaihi udghoshya jetavyam madhyasthashcheda panditaha pandito yadi tatraiva pakshapato dhiropyatam. If the person before you is not a pandita, then keep shouting over him to win the debate. But if you think your opponent is a scholar, is a pandita who has valid points, then keep accusing him of ideological bias. Pakshapato dhiropyatam. Nilakantha Dikshita belonged to the 1600s, but his points are as valid today as they were then. We see this on prime time every day. This kind of debate, where winning is the only goal, Gautama calls as jalpa. Vitanda. Vitanda is whataboutery, where you don't try to determine your own position, but simply attack the opposite and you respond to an accusation or a difficult question by making a counter accusation or raising a different issue. This is vitanda. Chala, where you say a sentence in a certain meaning, but your opponent changes the meaning of the sentence to prove your argument wrong. This type of argument is called as chala, nigrahasthana. The cases or situation types where the debate will be concluded and one side will be declared as defeated. Nigrahasthana is the defeat situation, the clinchers. The Nyāyaśāstra lists 22 nigrahasthanas. For example, if the opponent cannot understand the proponent's argument, or if he's confused, or if he cannot reply within a reasonable time limit, all these will be cases of defeat. So, Vada, Jalpa, Vitanda, Chala, Nigrahasthana, these are the terms that are included in Gautama's first sutra, and they're elaborated in the later chapters. But you see, these are terms that deal with correct argumentation. It is not philosophy. In fact, Vatsyayana, the Bhashyakara, tells us that although Nyāyaśāstra includes a discussion on the nature of soul, on niśreyasa, etc., it should be distinguished from pure philosophy because of its special focus on reasoning and logic. So more than philosophy, early Nyaya was concerned with investigating the strength or weakness of an argument through reason and logic. See, Nyaya Sutras are certainly not the first to discuss argumentation. There are several specimens of Vada Shastras which have come down to us. There's a section of Vada rules in Charaka Samhita, and there are Vada rules in Upahridaya as well. In the works of Maitreya, Asanga, there are Tantra Yuktis in Kautilya's Arthashastra, etc. They were meant for students who wanted to learn how to conduct debates successfully, what tricks to learn, how to find loopholes in the opponent's positions, what pitfalls to be wary of, etc. Of course, it would be wrong. It would be wrong to say that the Nyaya Sutras are merely a Vada Shastra. No, it is definitely more than that. It's the first two padarthas of the 16 padarthas, the 16 terms included in the first sutra, the very first two terms, Pramana and Prameya. These two terms make this text a philosophical text. I'll explain why and how at a later point in this talk. The other 7 padarthas in the sutra, Samshaya, Prayojana, Drishtanta, Siddhanta, Avayava, Tarka, Nirnaya. These 7 padarthas is the Nyaya model of logic. It's a set of methods used to solve philosophical problems. It's a fundamental tool for the advancement of meta-philosophy. It starts with an initial doubt, samshaya, as to whether A or not A is the case. And it ends with a decision, a nirnaya, that A or not A is the case. To arrive from doubt to decision, 5 steps are involved. The prayojana, the drishtanta, siddhanta, avayava, and tarka. This is the model of Navya logic. I'll come to this later, of course. For now, I want to focus on how the discipline evolved. So the oldest text of Nyāyaśāstra is Akshapada Gautama's Nyāyaśūtras, dated to perhaps the 2nd or 3rd century CE. About 530 sutras divided into 5 chapters. See, Gautama is a very common name, and various personages by this name flourished in very ancient times. So scholars have attempted to identify the author of these sutras with one or another such person. So for example, the great scholar S.C. Vidyabhushana believes the Gautama of Nyaya Sutras is the same Gautama who wrote Gautama Dharma Sutras. The Skanda Purana tells us that the author of the Nyaya Sutras is none other than Ahalya's husband, who brought the river Godavari to earth. Akshapado Mahayogi, Gautamakhyo Bhavan Munihi, Godavari Samaneta, Yahalyah Patih Prabhu. Of course, there are different stories to explain this strange name also. Akshapada. Aksha means eyes and pada is feet. So literally, Akshapada is eyes in his feet. In the Ramayana, we hear the story of Akshapada who came from Mithila. The legend goes that Gautama fell into an arid well while walking down the streets, completely engrossed in philosophical contemplation. And it took cumbrous efforts to recover him from the well. And after he had been rescued, God took great pity on him and bestowed on his feet another pair of eyes so that he could see the road. According to another story, the great sage Vyasa was a disciple of Gautama. Vyasa had criticized Gautama's Nyāyaśāstra in his Mahabharata and his Brahma Sutras, so Gautama took a vow to never see him again. Vyasa begs for his forgiveness, lays himself prostrate at Gautama's feet, until finally Gautama takes pity on his disciple. But there's a problem. He cannot break his vow. He has taken a vow to never see him again and he cannot break it. So what he does instead is create a pair of eyes on his feet to cast a merciful glance at Vyasa. Akshapadohi swamata dushakasya Vyasasya mukha darshanam chakshusha na kartavyam iti pratignyaya paschad Vyasena prasaditaha Pade netram prakashya tam drishtavan iti prasiddhi. Because these are legends with no historical merit. A very strange name, Akshapada, has led to the creation of such stories. We don't know anything about the historical Gautama. After Gautama, the most important Nyayika is Vatsyayana. Vatsyayana is not to be confused with the author of the Kama Sutras. Mallanaga Vatsyayana wrote the Kama Sutras, whereas Pakshilaswamin Vatsyayana wrote the Nyāyaḥ. The Nyāyaḥ is not only the first commentary on the Nyāyaśāstras that is available, it is also the most important introduction to the Nyaya school of thought. Vatsyayana set out the major positions and arguments of the school, and the later commentators primarily developed or clarified Vatsyayana's positions. His work also gave the impetus to the Buddhists, Vasubandhu, Tinnaga, to some extent Dharmakirti, to develop their own form of Nyaya, their own systematic treatment of epistemology, logic, and dialectics. So Vatsyayana not only accurately interpreted the Nyaya Sutras, he also set forth many important new theories in addition to the seminal ideas found in the sutras itself. After Vatsyayana, the most important Nyayika is Udyotakara, who wrote the Nyāyaḥ Vartika. This work is an extended commentary or Vatsyayana's Nyāyaḥ. If you're worried that I'm going to give you a long list of the names of every Nyayika, no, I'm not going to do that. But these are some of the most important Nyayikas, some of the best minds that this civilization has produced. And it's unfortunate that their names are not widely known. It's not enough to know a Shankara or a Vidyaranya, because the contributions of Udyotakara or a Gadadhara are not anything less comparatively. So when you're learning a particular discipline, it's only fair that you acquaint yourself with at least the important contributors. That is the reason that I'm doing this. So Udyotakara, by the time of Udyotakara, Nyaya had come under severe attack from the Buddhist side, particularly from Dinnaga. Honestly speaking, Dinnaga, Dharmakirti, these are intellectual giants. Their works are formidable and their contributions to the development of the Pramana theory is unparalleled. Perhaps Nyaya would not have advanced as much as it did without their contributions. So their works must not be ignored simply because they're Buddhist. They're beautiful works. So Udyotakara's Nyaya Bhashya Vartika is primarily polemic in nature. It is hypercritical of the Naga and the Buddhist position, but it is also a very robust defense of Gautama's positions. In this work, Udyotkara worked out the full details of the positions of Nyaya and brought such a logical acumen to it that was never seen before. So much so that the poet Subandhu in his Vasavadatta, he calls him Nyaya Sthitime Udyotakara Swarupam. That Udyotakara is the embodiment of the Nyaya defense. After him, Nayayikas like Jayanta Bhatta, Bhasarvajna, Taparyacharya, Vachaspati Mishra, etc., they contributed to develop the Nyaya theory completely. This phase of Nyaya is called as Prachina Nyaya, and these Nayayikas are called as Prachina Nayayikas. After Vachaspati Mishra, with Udayanacharya to be exact, began a new phase in Nyaya studies, Navya-Nyaya. It is in Udayana's works that the two streams of Nyaya and Vaisheshika joined completely. The two traditions merged completely and became one. This is one of the new or Navya features of Navya-Nyaya. The fact that it is the combined tradition of Nyaya and Vaisheshika. So Udayana forms the watershed between the Prachina and the Nyaya, between the old and the new. Navya-Nyaya was consolidated in the hands of Gangesha Upadhyaya. Gangesha Upadhyaya is the most important name of Navya-Nyaya. He belonged to the 12th, 13th century. Udayana belonged to the 11th century. So in a span of 200 to 50 years, Navya-Nyaya or modern logic became a formidable force. Gangesha Upadhyaya's Tattva Chintamani, there's not a single work that became such a blockbuster hit as this work did. It is such a grand book. It took the learned world by storm. Commentaries upon commentaries were written on single sentences from this book. An entire bhashya for one single sentence of this book. After Tattva Chintamani, no one wrote commentaries on Gautama's Nyaya Sutra or Vatsyayana's Nyaya Bhashya. No. The Tattva Chintamani became the focal point of the Navya-Nyaya discourse. For almost 100 years, Navya-Nyaya was confined to Mithila. Gangesha and Udayana both belonged to Mithila, the northern part of modern Bihar. The Panditas of Mithila made it their monopoly. They were the trusted guardians of Navya-Nyaya, and they took special care to see that the privilege of teaching this Shastra did not pass away from them into what they thought were unworthy hands. We hear stories of utmost cautiousness. We're told that the manuscripts were not allowed to be copied. The students had to commit the entire texts to memory, and before returning home, they had to be very carefully examined by their teachers. Students from various parts of India flocked to Mithila to learn from the far-famed scholars. It was a matter of great privilege to learn from the Mithila scholars. And when they completed their studies, their scholarship was recognized and respected all over the country. From Mithila, Navya-Nyaya spread to Bengal, to Varanasi, to Vijayanagara, and very soon, this became the standard for anyone writing on any subject, be it Vedanta, Vyakarana, Alankara Shastra, Dharma Shastra. Navya-Nyaya seeped into every discipline. See, what was distinctive about Navya-Nyaya was its technical language. Gangesh Upadhyaya developed this technical language to clarify many philosophical questions. And it is this technical language that was adopted across the disciplines. It became the language of all serious discourse. You know how in the West, the language of symbolic logic developed. And today, this is used extensively, not only in logic and mathematics, but in biology and other physical sciences, in grammar, especially the grammar of formal languages, in economics, marginally in epistemology, ethics, law. The discovery and development of the arithmetization of syntax and recursive function theory led to the development of Turing machines and other machine languages, which have become indispensable in computer programming. This is sort of what happened in 13th century India. See, the technical language of Navya-Nyaya is not symbolic, but it is just as rigorous. See, the Navya-Nyayikas regarded ordinary Sanskrit as an imperfect vehicle for philosophical discourse, for conducting philosophical discourse, mainly because it is filled with ambiguity. It is not just the presence of ambiguities in the lexicon. Words like Saindhava, which can mean either salt or a horse. Saindhava means both salt and horse. No, but this is not the problem, because you can always eliminate such terms, find other terms which are not ambiguous. The bigger problem is of articles. A and the. These are the articles of English grammar, correct? In Sanskrit, there is no systematic or compulsory use of articles. For example, the sentence Ghato Neelaha. This sentence is correct. Pot is blue. It might mean either the pot is blue, some pot is blue, or every pot is blue. So say, for example, I say Vaidyaha Agataha. Okay, in this sentence, the word Vaidyaha, doctor, does it refer to an individual or a universal? I've not talked about the concept of universals in Nyaya, so it might be difficult to understand what I mean by this. But let me put it like this. In English, if I say the doctor has come, I say the doctor has come. So you immediately know that I'm talking about a specific doctor. If I say a doctor has come, you know that I'm not referring to a specific doctor, but a doctor in general. The difference between the two sentences lies in the usage of the article the and a. When I say the doctor, it becomes particularized. When I say a doctor, it is general. Particular is called vyakti and general is called jati. So in Sanskrit, when I say Vaidyaha Agataha, there is no article here. There is no the or a to tell me whether this doctor is a doctor in particular or a doctor in general. So how do I know whether we are referring to vyakti or jati, to a particular doctor or a doctor in general? This becomes more complicated when two or more nouns are occurring in the same sentence. Consider a phrase. Dhumasya karanam. Cause of smoke. Dhumasya karanam. This might mean cause of a particular body of smoke. Karana of this dhuma. Dhumasya karanam. Karana of this dhuma. Or it can mean cause of some or other smoke. Any smoke. Karana of any dhuma. Or else cause of all smoke. Three possibilities, correct? Dhumasya karanam, two words. This phrase can be interpreted in three ways. Now, when such a phrase is combined with another noun to form a sentence, Dhumasya karanam vadhi. Fire is cause of smoke. No articles. Fire is cause of smoke. Dhumasya karanam vadhi. This leads to 9 different readings of the sentence. All fire is the cause of some smoke. Some fire is the cause of all smoke. Each fire is the cause of some smoke or other. There's a body of smoke which is the effect of every fire, so on and so forth. 9 different readings of this one sentence. This ambiguity is not the result of any ambiguity in the words used. No, this is due to an ambiguity in the syntax of the language itself. Similarly, take for example 2 sentences. Ghate ghatatva and mahanase dhumha. Ghate ghatatva means pothood or potness, or the quality of being a pot is in a pot. Ghate ghatatva, the quality of being a pot is in a pot. Second sentence, mahanase dhumaha. Smoke is in the kitchen. Mahanasa means kitchen. So mahanase dhumaha, smoke is in the kitchen. In both sentences, we have used the saptami vibhakti. In potness, in a pot, and smoke in a kitchen. But are the two the same? Is potness in a pot in the same way that smoke is in the kitchen? Potness is not literally in the pot, no. Inside the pot, it's not inside the pot, correct? Potness is not a thing that is inside the pot, no. It is a quality that belongs to the pot. But how is this conveyed in the sentence? There is ambiguity. Similarly, the nay pratyaya, the prefix of negation, it suffers from so much ambiguity. It sometimes indicates anyonya bhava, samsarga bhava. The word itself does not convey the exact meaning. See, these things don't matter in day-to-day conversations. But when we're discussing very subtle philosophy, when you're trying to convey very subtle ideas, when you want precision, mathematics-like precision, then these things make a big difference. So ordinary Sanskrit, with all its ambiguities and syntax, was found to be ill-suited for the careful formulation of philosophical doctrine. The alternative was to construct a more formal, artificial language free from these defects. And this is exactly what Navya-Nyaya did. Navya-Nyaya invented an artificial formal language that has its base as Sanskrit. This Navya-Nyaya language, it made use of a small number of technical words like adhikarana, adheya, nirupaka, avachedaka, pratiyogini, etc. A small number of technical words, and combined these technical words with normal words to give rise to a formal language. So, for example, a sentence like, the pot has a long neck and a conch-shaped handle. The pot has a long neck and a conch-shaped handle. This sentence may be written in Navya-Nyaya as long neck, conch-shaped handleness is located in the pot. Or take another example, the one that I've put on the screen. No pot is on the ground. No pot is on the ground. Normal Sanskrit sentence would be na bhutale ghataha. Navya-Nyaya will turn this around to say that the ground is the locus of the absence of all pots. if I have to give you a perfect translation of the Navya-Nyaya formulation of this sentence, Bhutala nirupita adheyata nirupita pratiyogita sa ghatatva vachinna. Absenteehood, conditioned by superstratumhood, conditioned by ground, is limited by pothood. This complicated sentence simply means no pot is on the ground. You see how difficult this is. A simple sentence becomes so complicated. To read Gangesh Upadhyaya or Raghunatha Shiromani or Gadadhara is no joke, I tell you. It will turn your head upside down, bheja fry in one paragraph. So this technical language was adopted across all disciplines. Everyone began writing their texts in this technical language, and the most simple things became most complicated. The later centuries became inundated with a mass of commentarial literature, a web of complicated metalinguistic innovations in the search for ever greater precision and sophistication of definition and analysis. Unfortunately, in my opinion, while we see scholasticism at its climax, at its height, I don't think we can say the same thing about true philosophy. We can wade through volumes of controversial jargon without coming across a single flash of deep thought or real insight into the nature of things. It's a very wordy warfare, yes, but that is all. Of course, this is my opinion now. I have not studied Navya-Nyaya extensively, so I might change my mind at a later point. I don't know. But anyway, a kind of reaction against the excesses of this scholasticism seems to have led the writers of the 17th century to seek fresher fountains of the original sutras. A sign of this reaction was the production of manuals for the beginners, the Bhasha Paricheda, the Vedanta Paribhasha. These are the instances of this class of books, the manuals for beginners, which must have come as such a relief to the students lost in the mazes of Panchalakshani or Advaita Siddhi. Another new or Navya feature of Navya-Nyaya was its almost exclusive focus on the refinement of the Pramana theory, epistemology. I want to talk about this in a little detail because this is also a very important contribution of Nyaya to Indian philosophy. Please understand the difference between logic and epistemology. Logic deals with the steps to go from doubt to decision. You start with a hypothesis, a theorem, and step by step, you will test your hypothesis. It's exactly like the steps followed in proving a mathematical formula. In the end, you will arrive at a conclusion that the hypothesis is correct or that it is wrong. So from doubt, samshaya, from hypothesis to decision to nirnaya, a nirnaya that the hypothesis is correct or that it is not correct. From doubt to decision, from hypothesis or theorem to conclusion, this is logic. From start to finish, from samshaya to nirnaya is called as logic. Epistemology, on the other hand, it deals with questions like, what do we know? What does it mean to say that we know something? How do we know that we know? See, true cognition is of great importance in Nyaya philosophy. It is because of the importance given to true cognition that this school developed such a rigorous method of logic and epistemology. See, jnana is often translated as knowledge. This is entirely wrong. Within the texts, within the Nyaya texts at least, jnana does not refer to knowledge. It is used in the sense of cognition, cognizing something, being aware of something. Cognition is episodic, it is momentary, and cognition can be wrong. You can see a snake instead of a rope. This is wrong cognition. So jnana means cognition. Knowledge is technically called as prama, not jnana. Epistemology deals with certifying a cognition. How do you know that what you are cognizing is true or not? What is the proof of it? How to distinguish, differentiate between true and false cognition? Under what conditions does a true cognition arise? See, your only contact to the external world is through your senses. How do you determine the nature of the external world when the data that the sense organs give you are not reliable? We know that it is not entirely reliable. The sense organs have their limitations. The typical human eye is only capable of perceiving light at wavelengths between 390 and 750 nanometers. Human ear can pick up sounds of frequencies between 20 and 20,000 hertz. We can't see anything beyond the visible spectrum or hear anything outside the auditory spectrum. And even within those limitations, the sense organs don't always give you the correct information. Optical illusions, for example. So when you set out to discover the truth, you want to know what the reality of the external world is. Then you need to figure out a way to overcome the limitations. You need to figure out a way to establish what is true and what is not. So the Nyaya school developed Pramana theory. According to this, if a cognition is verified or obtained by any one of the four pramanas, then you can be assured of its truth. So the cognition that is brought about by a valid means of cognition is true. Otherwise, it is not true. Nyaya recognizes four valid means of obtaining cognition, four valid instruments of knowledge. These instruments are called as pramanas. So if the cognition is obtained through any one of these four pramanas, these four instruments, then it is true. Otherwise, it is not true. True cognition is a necessary condition for attaining niśreyasa in Nyaya. It is absolutely necessary. It is only through true cognition that niśreyasa can be attained. Tattvajnanat niśreyasadhigamaha. This was the first sutra. Not only is true cognition necessary for niśreyasa or apavarga, it is also absolutely essential for trivarga also. True cognition enables the cognizer to act correctly with regard to objects. It enables him or her to make the correct choices concerning these objects. In fact, correctness of the cognition is gauged precisely from the ability to make the right choices. If you have cognized correctly, then you will act correctly. Practical utility is the measuring rod of truth in Nyaya. So if you preach one thing and do another, it just shows that you have not cognized correctly. You have not understood what it is that you are preaching. There is no prama there. Vatsyayana writes, Pramanamantarena na thapati pattihi. Narthapattivattim antarena pravritti samarthyam pramanena khalvayam jnanartham upalabhya tam artham abhipsati jihasati. Without a means of valid cognition, there is no cognition of an object. Without cognition of an object, there is no appropriateness of human activity. For when a cognizer has cognized an object with a means of valid cognition, he either wishes to obtain that object or to avoid it. So yes, differentiating between true and false cognition lies at the heart of the Nyaya philosophy. I'll talk a little bit about true and false cognitions according to Nyāyaśāstra. The term cognition is used by the Nayayikas to refer to any savishayaka, object-directed mental state. See, in order to cognize something, there has to be an object of cognition, correct? This object may be anything. So cognition in Nyaya includes perceiving, inferring, doubting, guessing, remembering, etc. Now, what is true cognition and what is false cognition? Let us first divide cognition into two types, anubhava and smriti, non-recollective and recollective cognition. Both anubhava and smriti may be true or false. It may be prama or aprama. Prama means true cognition, true jnana, knowledge. Remember that jnana does not mean knowledge. Prama means knowledge. Jnana is simply cognition, which is why mithya jnana means false cognition. Okay? Knowledge is basically that jnana, that cognition, which is certified by a pramana. It is an epistemically accredited awareness event. It is accredited, certified to be true. Only if jnana is certified to be true is it called prama. Only then does it qualify as knowledge. Aprama means false cognition, false jnana. This is not knowledge. So both anubhava and smriti may be prama or aprama. Jnana becomes prama if it is certified by a pramana. There are 4 pramanas: pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, and shabda. Perception, inference, analogy, and testimony. Give me one moment. Now, each of this is very important. And this is, in fact, one of the most important discussions in the gamut of Indian philosophy. It is the most important contribution of Nyaya to philosophy in general. And it needs to be understood in some depth. I will sort of give you a feel of the type of discussion that goes on within these pages. So it serves as a type of introduction to the type of thinking that is involved in such matters. So we will start with pratyaksha. Pratyaksha is perception. The Sanskrit word pratyaksha to aksha, eyes, generally sensory faculty or sense organ. So etymologically, pratyaksha should be translated as sensation or sensory experience. Gautama writes, Indriyartha sannikarshotpannam jnanam avyapadeshyam avyabhichari vyavasayatmakam pratyaksham. Perception is that kind of cognition which arises from the contact of a sense organ with an object. Further, it is avyapadeshyam, that is non-verbal, avyabhichari, that is accurate, and vyavasayatmakam. It has a definite nature. Sounds simple enough. It is anything but simple. See, The Nyaya view of the external world can be superficially called as realism. It is a rich, complicated kind of realism, not of a simple variety, which is sort of why it is justly called a philosophy. See, the problem of perception is a very important topic. What can we directly know, and how do we know it? It is generally discussed in the Western context also with reference to three main theories. The three main theories: direct realism, representationalism, and phenomenalism. All these three philosophical views are three very different answers to the innocent looking question, what do we perceive directly? The word directly is what is important here. It makes all the difference between one answer and another. For example, I see apples or chairs or trees. The realist would mean exactly what he says. I see an apple. Whereas both the representationalist and the phenomenalist would beg to differ on this point. No one sees the apple directly, they would say. The two would agree about the indirectness of seeing an apple. But while the representationalist means something slightly different by the word see in I see an apple, the phenomenalist means something different by the phrase apple. I'll try to explain this a little bit better. To understand Nyaya realism, it is useful to distinguish ontological from epistemological realism. In simple words, ontological realism means that there exists an external world that is independent of the mind. Whether you are there to perceive it or not, it exists. Concretely, really, an external world exists. This understanding of the world is called ontological realism. Epistemological realism means you believe that humans are capable of knowing something about the true nature of things in themselves. Not only does an external world exist independently of the mind, but it can also be known exactly how it is by the mind. This is important. To give you an example, let us say that you have an apple in your hand. Now this apple is distinct from just the experience or the idea of an apple. The apple is distinct from just its red color, its touch, its texture, its taste, and also from the series or set of these qualities. Apple is beyond its color, its taste, its feel. See, the color, the taste, the feel, these are qualities or properties of the apple. If they are properties of the apple, there must be something called apple that is different from its properties. For it to have the properties, there must be something called apple apart from its properties. Such an apple, which is beyond simply the red color, beyond the touch and feel of it, beyond the taste of it, this apple, which is something beyond the properties that it has, this apple is called as dravya in Nyaya. Dravya is basically the substratum that can hold the guna and the karma, that can hold qualities, properties, and action, karma. It can hold it. It is a substratum that holds guna and karma. Anything that can become a substratum for guna and karma is called as dravya. Say the red color in an apple. This red color cannot further have any other qualities. It cannot have any action also. The red color in the apple cannot move from here to there. No. Therefore, it is not dravya. According to Nyāyakas, there are 9 types of dravyas. Each of these dravyas have essential natures that determines what sort of qualities they must have, what sort of quality they may have, and what sorts they cannot have. Say, for example, Akasha is a dravya, but it cannot hold qualities like color and taste and smell. Atman is a dravya. It cannot hold qualities like color, smell, etc. But it can hold qualities like feelings, like emotions, like volition. So there are 9 types of dravyas. Now, Nyāyakas argue that we perceive dravya directly. We perceive this apple, the underlying apple, not just its qualities or mental images of its qualities. According to Nyāyakas, we perceive this underlying dravya, apple, directly. See, so according to Nyaya, we see as well as touch the dravya directly. We can see and touch their properties also directly. But we do not, in the same sense, smell the flower. We smell only its fragrance. We don't taste the sugar. We taste only its sweetness. We don't hear the train. We hear only the whistle. See, I'll take another example. Say, for example, I look outside and see a blue car. Here, the car is dravya, the substratum, the substance. The dravya is translated as substance, but it is more correctly translated as substratum. So the car is dravya, but the blue color is guna. It is quality. This quality resides in the car, in the substance, through a special connection called as samavaya. Samavaya is a type of connection which is indissoluble, inseparable. The blue color is inseparable from the car. So this relationship is called as samavaya. I didn't want this lecture to get too technical, but what to do, some of this is unavoidable. So there's a substance, car, and the blue color resides in the car through an inseparable relationship called as samavaya. You cannot remove the blue color from the car. A better example would be a red apple. You can't take the red color out of the apple image, but anyway. Now, when I see the blue car, what is happening here? Give me one moment, I'm sorry. When I see the blue car, what is happening here is that the contact between my eyes and the car, the dravya, the car, the contact between my eyes and the dravya, the car, is called sanyoga. Sanyoga is a connection which is separable. If I'm holding a glass in my hand, there is sanyoga between my hand and the glass. This connection can be separated. If I keep the glass on the table, I'm not holding it anymore. The connection is broken. So as long as the glass is connected to my hand, it is connected through sanyoga. So now when I see the car, the contact between my eyes and the car, the dravya, the underlying car, without its qualities, the substratum, this car, the contact between my eyes and this car is called as sanyoga. But the contact between my eyes and the blue color is of a different kind. It is called Sanyukta Samavaya. I'm seeing the blue color indirectly, not directly. I'm seeing the car directly through Sanyoga, and I'm seeing the blue color indirectly through the car. And because the connection between the car and the blue color is Samavaya, the connection between the car and my eyes is Sanyoga. So the connection between my eyes and the blue color becomes Sanyukta Samavaya. So I see the car through Sanyoga Sambandha. I see that it is blue through the Sambandha of Sanyukta Samavaya. Further, I see the colorness of the blue color through Sanyukta Samaveta Samavaya. This is a little complicated. I won't go into the details. There is another thing that is important here. Gautama has stated in the sutra that perception is avyapadeshyam, non-verbal, correct? So my cognition of the blue car is non-verbal, avyapadeshyam. So what happens here is, I'm seeing the object in front of me. I recall having seen a car before, and I superimpose that memory of carness on the object that I see now. So although I see the car directly, I understand that it is a car because of the superimposition of my memory onto it. The Buddhists argue that it is not memory that is superimposed, but ideas, vikalpa, concepts that are superimposed. So according to the Buddhists, we literally construct convenient fictions according to our desires. But according to the Nyāyaḥas, suppose I misperceive a rope as being a snake. The account given by the Nyaya is that I recall and superimpose the feature of snakehood on the rope. I see the rope, but I'm superimposing something else onto the rope. I'm understanding it as something different because I have superimposed something else onto it. I've seen the rope. The perception is not erroneous. It is the superimposition that is erroneous. Similarly, if I hallucinate something, say I see water where there is no water. According to Nyaya, I am superimposing the memory of some previously encountered water upon the region of space in front of me. This is called mislocation, anyatha khyati, theory of perceptual error. Another interesting argument of the Naiyayikas is that ordinary knowledge is neither self-revealing nor self-validating. I know something does not mean that I know something. They do not accept that I know something. So cognitive event may occur and pass away unnoticed or unperceived unless we actively inwardly perceive it. This inward perceiving is called anuvyavasaya, inward perception. It is through this anuvyavasaya that we know feelings and emotions also. So this is pratyaksha, very superficially. It is quite a complicated theory, but the outline of it is what you just heard. If pratyaksha is one pramana, the other pramanas, the other instruments of knowing something are anumana, upamana, and shabda. Shabda is Veda. But more than Veda, it is defined as the testimony of an apta. Apta is a person who has directly experienced dharma. He has directly experienced the dharma and is motivated by a desire to share what he has seen. So apta is a person who knows the truth and has no reason to lie. So the word of such a person is called as Shabda Pramana. It is not necessarily the Vedas. It could also be the words of a rishi. In fact, the Veda is a pramana because it is the words of an apta. Here, apta is Ishvara. See, according to Nyaya, the Vedas are not a Paurusheya. They claim that it is ridiculous to assume that the Vedas have no author, no speaker. For the Nyayikas, Ishvara is the author of the Vedas. Because Ishvara is trustworthy, his statements are also trustworthy and infallible. They cannot be wrong because Ishvara's knowledge is perfect, eternal, universal. Therefore, the Vedas are true. But more than the Vedas, for a Nyayika, the most important pramana is Anumana, inference. Sorry. Anumana is more important than even the Veda. In fact, almost the entire corpus of Navya-Nyaya literature is dedicated to the discussion of Anumana, inference. Why? Because Nyaya sets out to prove the existence of Ishvara, of Atma, etc. through inference. They work it out like proving a mathematical formula. Step by step, they establish the existence of Ishvara, the existence of Atma. See, in Vedanta, the third sutra of the Brahma Sutras, Shastra Unitvat, it establishes that Brahman, the sole independent cause of the world, is not knowable through any other source of knowledge than Shruti, Shastra, especially Upanishads. It is only through a study, a thorough understanding, thorough study of the meaning of Shruti, only this can lead you to a full comprehension of the nature of Brahman and to the actual realization of its existence. Against this Vedantic position stands the Nyaya thesis that Ishvara's existence can be inferred through proper rational argumentation without any support of the Veda. The same holds good for proving the existence of Atman also. I'll show you how it's done through an example. This is how Gautama puts forth his argument. In the 10th sutra, he states, Ichha dvesha prayatna sukha dukkha jnanani atmanaha lingam iti. Ichha, desire, dvesha, aversion, prayatna, volition, sukha, pleasure, dukkha, pain, jnana, cognition. These are Atma's linga, indicators, the indicators of the self. The self can be inferred with the help of desire, aversion, etc. Put it in the symbolic form. If Sx is X is a substance, Cx where X is state of consciousness, Qx where X is a quality, Dx where X is a body, and Ixy is where X inheres in Y, then adopting the symbolism, we can write the inference like this. First, there are states of consciousness or mental events: attraction, revulsion, anger, fear, disgust, etc. These states of consciousness are considered as qualities in Nyaya, gunas. Now, gunas cannot exist by themselves. For example, blue color. This is a quality. It is a guna. Now, this blue color cannot exist without a substratum, without an adhisthana. It cannot exist in vacuum. An object is blue when this blue color, this quality resides in it. Without a substratum, without a dravya, without an adhisthana, blue simply cannot exist. Okay, this is an important principle in Nyaya, that every guna needs a dravya to exist in, a substratum to exist in. Okay. Now, feelings like attraction and revulsion are qualities, gunas. They cannot simply exist in vacuum. They must exist in some substance. Now, what is this substance? This substratum, what supports these gunas? See, there are only 9 types of substratum, 9 types of dravyas. So, 9 possibilities. Okay. Prithvi, Apa, Vayu, Agni, Akasha, Kala, Dik, Manas, and Atman. These are the 9 dravyas that are accepted in Nyaya. Prithvi, Apa, Vayu, Agni, Akasha, Kala, Dik, Manas, and Atman. Now, gunas like desire or revulsion, which of the 9 substrata can they possibly reside in? It cannot be the Panchabhutas, or Kala, or Dik, or Manas. So, therefore, it has to be Atman. See, the Buddhists, I'm just giving you an illustration of how the debate unfolds. The Buddhists raise a question against the second point stated. The second point is that feelings such as desire, fear, etc. are gunas. Buddhists say that we will not accept that feelings and emotions are qualities. Gunatvamapi nastyasya yato adhishthana kalpana. To answer the question posed by the Buddhist, the Nyayayikas take the method of elimination. According to them, there are only 7 types of objects in the universe: dravya, guna, karma, samanya, vishesha, and samavaya and abhava. 7 types of objects. There are technical reasons why emotions, etc., cannot be dravya, cannot be karma, cannot be samanya, cannot be vishesha or samavaya or abhava. So they must be guna. Next, the Buddhists ask, why must you assume that qualities require a substratum to exist? Why can't our experiences and objects like colors and touches and tastes and smells be independent? Why must they be owned by or belong to something beyond themselves? They are self-sufficient. But this is not a valid argument. It doesn't make sense. What does it mean to say that the taste of sweetness simply exists? Loud noise simply exists. Without an object making the sound, or without an object tasting sweet, these qualities simply don't exist on their own. No. So if you don't ascribe ownership to experiences, then how do you talk about it? Here is a little nice piece of jubilation. There's a pretty dirty bit of jealousy. It's not possible. It's quite ridiculous. Then the Buddhists raise another objection. Why can't these qualities be supported by the body? The substratum for these gunas can be the body. Nyaya rejects this outright. 3 arguments are given against considering the body as the substratum for emotions. A, if a particular guna belongs to a body, it should be in it as long as the body exists. Unless some new antagonistic quality comes to replace it, it should exist in it as long as the body exists. But consciousness is not found in the body at death, when the body stays intact and no other opposite or pratibandhi quality of the same category pushes out consciousness. So this guna does not, because this guna does not last in the body as long as the body exists, it cannot be, the body cannot be the substratum. B, since consciousness is present all over the body, any part of it must be called a subconscious substance then. But this leads to the absurd position that one body contains hosts of conscious agents. Third argument, the final and the weightiest argument, is that consciousness cannot be an attribute of the body because it is basically dissimilar to the bodily qualities, the corporeal qualities like color, sound, weight, temperature, etc. These qualities are available to external perception, but conscious states, like a feeling of pain or a spark of joy or an impulse, they have the peculiarity that they are neither publicly observable by external sense organs nor completely imperceptible. They're internally perceptible. Moreover, there are other aspects in which a mental state is generically different from a physical quality, like intentionality, unlocatability. We cannot sensibly ask the question, does your knowledge measure 4 square feet? Is your remorse to the west of your unhappiness? There's one more problem. To establish the status of the self as the substratum, you must show that its job cannot be done by the manas, which is the 8th dravya. In Western philosophy, no distinction is made between the mind and the self. There is no talk of mind or an internal sense organ over and above the self. The necessity of admitting both entities emerges in the course of Nyaya arguments against the possibility of the manas itself being the substratum for the emotions. Vatsyayana argues that there is a knower over and above the instrument of perception in every case of perception. If we don't require a manta over and above a manana kriya, then why do we require a drashta over and above the darshana kriya? But it is felt that we need to posit some seer over and above the eyes. As Socrates cautions Theaetetus, it is not the eyes that see, but we or our souls that see through the windows of the eyes. The soul exists even if the sense faculty is damaged, and it can recollect the data that it had gathered when the sense faculties were intact. How is this possible if there was no knower beyond the sense faculty itself? So for avoiding confusion, Naiyayikas translate manas as an inner sense organ. The way the eyes are instrument to seeing the outside world, the mind is an instrument used to see the inner world. It cannot itself be the instrument through which the self knows the feelings, emotions, etc. Over and above the instruments of perception, there is a perceiver, and this is Atman according to Nyaya. Further also, consider the sentence, I'm touching this laptop, perceiving its white color. I'm also thinking these thoughts. Different sense organs are giving me different data, but it is all being understood by one subject. So Prashastapada says, Aneka Gavakshantarvarti Prekshavat Ubhayadarshi Kashchid Ekaha. Different sense organs. There is one onlooker who can look at the different things at the same time through the different sense organs, different windows. Gautama also writes, Darshanas Parshanabhyam Ekartha Grahanat. Both the unity of the object and the unity of the subject are presupposed and hence proved by a sort of transcendental argument very strongly resembling that of Kant in his Critique of Pure Reason. Just as there must be an object which supports both the visual and the tactual qualities and is continuing to be re-identified by different sense reports, similarly, we cannot account for such introspective data as that the myself who had touched the object, I'm now seeing it, unless there's some common subject, some unity of a perception behind all these sense experience, you cannot account for it. This is sort of the same argument that is used within the Nyaya theory of karma also. If I'm rightly made accountable for my past actions, then the person who receives the karmic fruits of the actions must be the same person who performed those actions. Surely this implies that the kartru of the original act and the bhoktru of the karma phala is the same self. So the self is the substratum of ichha, dvesha, and also of karma phala.
This is a very simple inference that I've shown you from Prachina Nyaya. Prachina Nyaya is quite simplistic. It is not formal logic. It is later in Navya-Nyaya that the arguments attain a high degree of rigor. I thought I'll quickly show you the example from Navya-Nyaya also, the Ishvaranumana, the inference to establish the existence of Ishvara. Udayana was actually the first Nyayika to deal extensively with Ishvaranumana, but this was later developed by Gangesh Upadhyaya primarily. His formula is what you see on the screen, but this is quite complicated to explain, and I don't think I'll be able to do it in the time that we have. So I'll skip this and tell you about the inference in general and why it is important. And also the Nyaya method of inference. Sorry, my throat is acting up. See, for Prachina Nyaya, there are 5 steps involved in an inference. I don't want to go into too much technical details, but it is important that you understand why inference is important. So I'll give you the theoretical framework and we can work out some examples so you'll be able to understand it better. In the standard Nyaya model, there are 5 steps. First is pratigna, the hypothesis, the theorem, the statement which is to be proved. Second is hetu, the reason, which is basically the means for establishing your theorem, your hypothesis. Third is the general proposition, followed by an example. This is the supportive statement which demonstrates that you can prove your hypothesis using the given reason. Fourth is the application, the upanaya. It is the winding up with reference to the example of what is to be established as it is true or it is not true. Last is the conclusion, the nigamana. This is the restating of the proposition after the reason has been mentioned. This is the outline, the general framework. I'll give you an example so you understand it better. I'll take the standard example so this becomes clear. The example of Parvato Vanniman. First, what is your thesis? Your hypothesis is that the hill has fire on it. Why? What is the reason? Why did you come to such a conclusion? Because there is smoke that I can see there. So what if there is smoke there? So you say that wherever there is smoke, there is fire. Example, kitchen. And the hill is such a smoky place, therefore it has fire. Here the inference begins with a specific case. You see smoke coming from a mountain, so you state that there is fire on the mountain. You have to support your statement with a correct reason. How did you infer that there is fire on the mountain? Why is this statement, there is fire on the mountain, true? The reason is because you have previously observed that there is a relation between fire and smoke. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire. For example, in the kitchen, you apply this relation that you have seen previously here and say that if there is smoke coming from the mountain, there must be fire on the mountain, correct? 2 things are of great importance in this formula. First is smoke. It is because you see smoke that you infer fire. Smoke is what tells you that there is fire. This which tells you the inference. This which is the reason that you drew your inference. This is called as hetu or linga. This very distinctive linga, the very distinctive mark or clue that will lead you to your conclusion. This is called as hetu. See, this smoke and fire is obvious enough. But what happens when you're discussing Ishvara or Atman? You have to choose the hetu correctly. What is the most important clue that tells you that Ishvara exists or Atman exists, you have to look for the correct hetu. So hetu is very important. The second most important thing is the relation between the smoke and the fire. You have to be absolutely clear that there is a definite relation between smoke and fire. Wherever there is smoke, there must be fire. This has to be true. Even if there is a single instance where there is smoke and no fire, then your inference will not hold good. Your opponent will point to that instance where there is smoke and no fire and defeat your argument. You cannot conclude that there is fire on the mountain then. Similarly, whatever hetu you choose to demonstrate the existence of Ishvara or Atman, for example, say that you choose consciousness. You say that because consciousness is there, Atman is there. Before you can jump to this conclusion, you have to demonstrate that wherever consciousness is there, Atman is also there. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire. You have to show this. Only if you establish this, only if you prove that there is an inseparable relationship between consciousness and Atman, can you draw this inference. Now, how are you going to show this inseparable relationship? I'll give you another example. The proposition is that object A moves. Why? Because a force is applied to it. Whenever we apply a force to an object, the object moves. For example, if oxen pulls a cart, the cart moves. Now a force is applied to object A, therefore object A moves. It's relatively easy to put this reasoning into symbolic form. If A and B are given objects and X is a general object, P of X is the open predicate statement that X moves, F of X is the force that is applied to X, then the Nyaya syllogism can be formally represented in the way that I have shown on the screen. This is how you structure an argument, an inference. Historically, from the time of the Greeks, the mathematical model played an important part in the development of logic in the West. In India, it was grammar rather than mathematics that was dominant. And logical theories were influenced by the study of Vyakarana instead of mathematics. Why, we don't really know. But this is a little bit about logic and epistemology. I think we're running out of time, so I think I'll move forward. Briefly discuss the philosophy of Nyaya. I've talked about this in my previous lecture, so there's not much else to add, but maybe as a sort of recap. When we discuss philosophy, there are 5 principal questions that we must answer. What is the nature of Jagat, or the world that we see? What is the nature of Jiva, or the self? What is the nature of Ishvara, or God, if such a category is allowed in the system? Why is there suffering? Or rather, what is the cause of bandha? And what is the way out of suffering? What is the method of moksha? These 5 questions must be answered for a system to qualify as a philosophy, as a school of philosophy. So we look into how Nyaya has answered these questions. I'll first deal with the Nyaya view of the external world, the Jagat. Nyaya has a system of categories, padartha. It is an attempt to classify in a systematic way all the different types of existing things. Navya-Nyaya lists 7 categories of object. The universe is literally divided into 7 categories of object. Substance or substratum, dravya, quality or guna, motion or action, karma, universal, samanya, particularity or differentiator is vishesha, inherence is samavaya, and absence is abhava. The definitions are like this. I'll start with the sixth padartha, samavaya or universal. Universal is that which is eternal, unitary, and inherent in many things. This is samavaya, jati. It is eternal and uncreated. For example, suppose there are two chairs in a room. Both chairs have chairness in them. According to Nyaya, both chairs have chairness in them. Chairness is what makes a chair and differentiates it from, say, a table. This chairness is called universal. It will be there in all chairs. See, chairs may be of different shapes or different sizes or different colors, but there is something common between all of them that makes us call them all as chairs. This something, this common something is called as the universal, the samanya. And according to Nyaya, this samanya is eternal, uncreated. Even if there is no chair in the universe, there will still be chairness. Okay, samanya is of two types, para and apara. Para means higher, apara means lower. The highest samanya is satta, existentness. Satta is there in every dravya, in every guna, every karma. Okay, so this is samanya. Dravyas are substratum, the substratum that can accommodate or hold guna and karma, qualities and motions. We've discussed this before. There are 9 types of dravyas: Prithvi, Ap, Tejas, Vayu, Akasha, Dik, Kala, Manas, and Atman. Prithvi, Apa, Tejas, Vayu, Akasha, Dik, Kala, Manas, and Atman. These are the 9 types of dravyas. All the 9 types of dravyas are eternal and uncreated. Okay. All the 9 types are eternal and uncreated. Basically, dravya is that which possesses dravyatva, universal substancehood. Dravyatva, the property of being a dravya. And it also possesses the specific sensible qualities like odor, taste, color, touch, and sound, etc. See, of the 9 dravyas also, Prithvi, Up, Tejas, and Vayu are actually in the form of paramanus. Okay. The 4 are in the form of paramanus, whereas Akasha, Dik, Kala, Manas, and Atman, these 5 are infinite in size. They're infinite, whereas Prithvi, Up, Tejas, and Vayu are in the form of paramanus. According to Nyaya, what is called as the physical or material spatio-temporal world which we see before us is made by the combination of the paramanus, the 4 types of paramanus, and Akasha, Dik, Kala, Manas, Atman, etc. And all of these are eternal. All the 9 are eternal. Quality, guna, is defined as that which possesses satta. It isn't a dravya or a karma, and it possesses gunatva, the universal qualityhood gunatva. It possesses gunatva. There are 24 types of gunas: Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, Sparsha, Shabda, Sankhya, Parimana, Prathakva, Sanyoga, Vibhaga, Sukha, Dukha. All of these are gunas. There are 24 gunas. Then karma, motion, which is defined as that which causes sanyoga and viyoga between substances, and it possesses karmatva, the universal motionhood, karmatva. Karma is also of 5 types: Utshepana, the upward motion; Avakshepana, downward motion; Akunchana, contraction; Prasarana, expansion; Gamana, motion. Then the Vishesha, differentiating. Vishesha is that which exists in all eternal substances and functions as their differentiator. See, the idea is like this. Just as a cow and a horse are distinct entities, they have distinct properties. so too, even two atoms of the same substance. For example, Prithvi. Two atoms of the same substance must differ with respect to at least one property. Say you have two atoms of Prithvi. What differentiates one atom from the other? It is an atom, so it is not further divisible. It is an atom of Prithvi, so it is definitely different from an atom of, say, Tejas. But between two atoms of Prithvi itself, what is the difference? There must be some difference, no? This difference is accounted for with the help of what is called as Vishesha. Each atom possesses a Vishesha unique to itself, and this serves to distinguish it from any other atom of the same type. Okay, this is Vishesha. Inherence is defined as an inseparability. Ayutta Siddhi relation. Say there's a red apple, then the red color and the apple are inseparable. You can't separate the red color and the apple. The relation between the red color and the apple, this inseparable relation, is also a thing in Nyaya. It is also a thing. It is called as Samavaya. So inherence is Samavaya. Absence, Abhava. For a Nyayika, the absence of an object at a particular location is just as objective as the presence of an object. The way you can see a laptop in front of you, you can also see the absence of a desktop in front of you. Absence is literally a thing that can be perceived in Nyaya. See, the point is that a negative awareness, say a certain person is not in the room, and you know that such a person is not in the room. This is a kind of awareness that is phenomenally distinct from any awareness about what is in the room, correct? Experiences of non-existence of a thing is phenomenally distinct from the experience of a thing. But that the experience is there. You are aware that such and such a person is not in the room. This is an awareness. Even this absence, this awareness of absence, I mean, you're able to be aware of absence because absence is taken as a positive entity in Nyaya. Accordingly, there are 4 types of absence: Pragabhava, Dvamsa, Anyonya Bhava, and Atyanta Bhava. Pragabhava, before a certain thing comes into existence. There is Pragabhava. Prag is before, Pragabhava. So say before a pot is made, then there is Pragabhava of the pot in that place. Dvamsa is the absence of a pot after its destruction. Anyonya Bhava. The pot is not a cloth, cloth is not a pot. So in the pot, there is absence of cloth. In the cloth, there is absence of pot. This is Anyonya Bhava. Atyanta Bhava is the absolute absence. Pot is not on the ground. Atyanta Bhava is also eternal in Nyaya. Okay, it is also eternal in Nyaya. So of the 7 padarthas, 5 are eternal and uncreated. Dravya, Samanya, Vishesha, Samavaya, and Abhava. Dravya, Samanya, Vishesha, Samavaya, Abhava. These 5 are eternal, uncreated elements. Only Guna and Karma are not eternal. All others are eternal. For the Nyayikas, the world consists of eternal and non-eternal things. I've listed the eternal things of the world. Everything else is composite, the result of the combination of the 4 kinds of atoms and the other eternal substances. See, the implication of all this is that, say for example, there's a blue pen. Blue pen here. You see only a blue pen. But for the Nyayikas, he sees the dravya of the pen, that is penness, through sanyoga. He sees the blueness, the blue color that is inherent in the Dravya. He sees the colorness inherent in the color. Colorness is the samanya that is there in every color. What makes blue a color? What makes red a color? There is something called as colorness in them that is common to all colors. So he sees the colorness inherent in the color, and he also sees the absence of every other thing in it. He sees the absence of everything in the blue pen. As long as the blue pen is here, there is no pot there, there is no cloth there. He sees the absence of every other thing in it also. So the world view becomes different when you see it from the point of the view of a Nyāyaḥ. The world for the Nyāyaḥ is real. It exists independent of our knowing or not knowing it. Okay, but this theory is of course more subtle than what I've made it out to be. I'll say this much. The Nyāyakas faced severe opposition in the Buddhists and the Vedantins, but they held their ground. They defended the reality of the external world with extraordinary logic and arguments. And if you read their texts, you will find yourself almost convinced that's how good they are. I cannot bring it all here in the short talk, of course, but maybe you read the original sometime. I'll move on to the Nyaya discussion of the self. The self for a Nyayika, like I already told you, is a type of dravya, a substratum for the qualities like ichha, dvesha, prayatna, etc. So it is eternal and uncreated. Self is also innumerable in Nyaya. Nyaya argues for plurality of self. You see, only I can be a locus of my pain. Only I can know directly my desires, my fears. Similarly, only you can know your internal feelings. I cannot know yours. How is this possible if there is only one self? If there is only one self, if there is a common self between you and me, then I should know what is going on inside you. But I don't. So there are as many selves as there are individuals. Next, this self is all pervasive. It is infinite. Each individual self is all pervasive according to Nyaya. If my self is all pervading, it must pervade you also. If your all pervading self and your all pervading self must pervade me also. So what ties this all pervading self to a particular mind and body? How is it that your all pervading self is yours and my all pervading self is mine? It is because of karma. It is individual karma that ties individual self to a particular body and mind. Interestingly, in Nyaya, consciousness is not an essential quality of the self. It is capable of having consciousness, of course. Consciousness arises in a self when the appropriate causal conditions are present. That is, when the self comes in contact with the mind and the body. But by itself, it is unconscious. So in the state of moksha, in the state of liberation, according to Nyaya, self will not have consciousness. It will not be aware of itself either. So it is actually through inference, through So the self is innumerable. Each individual self is an all-pervasive, eternal dravya in Nyaya. Also, according to the Nyāyakas, Ishvara is a special type of Atman, a special type of self. Guna Vishishtam Atmantaram Ishvara. So Ishvara comes under the category of dravya. In order to distinguish him from ordinary Jivatma, he is called as Paramatma. Okay, so Ishvara is literally Paramatma. What makes him special or Paramatman? He has certain qualities that make him special. For example, he is eternally conscious, whereas Jivatman is not naturally conscious. Jivatman can become conscious, but is not naturally conscious. Then, his knowledge is eternal, universal, and perfect. He can desire and will, but he has no pain or pleasure. Ishvara creates the universe, he protects it and destroys it. How does he create the universe? He is only the instrumental cause, the nimitta karana, the upadana karana, the material out of which the universe is made up of is atoms, paramanu, the 4 types of atoms, and other eternal things. We already discussed the eternal uncreated things in the previous slide. It is out of these material that Ishvara creates the universe so that the various Atmans may obtain their karma phala. How does the combination of atoms take place initially? See, neither the material atoms nor the law of karma can act by themselves. So it is Ishvara who is responsible for the initial motion of the atoms and the functioning of the law of karma. So this is why Ishvara is not only the creator of the world, he is also its moral governor, the dispenser of justice in the Nyaya system. So the guiding factor in the whole process is the past karma of the souls. Okay, so justice is sort of built into the universe. Also remember that creation and destruction of the world is applicable only to the composite objects of the world, which are non-eternal. The eternal things are, well, eternal. They exist even when the created universe does not. Okay. We will also finally discuss bandha and moksha very quickly. Conclude this section. See, for the Nyayika, mithya jnana is of 2 types. 2 defective judgments about the nature of reality. First mithya jnana is the wrong understanding of the self. Wrong understanding that the self is a psychophysical complex. That is the body-mind entity that undergoes pain and pleasure. This is the first mithya jnana. Wrong understanding about what the self is. Second mithya jnana is about the nature of the external world. Wrong understanding that the objects of the world are worthy of attachment. This is the second mithya jnana. Let us discuss the first type of mithya jnana. For the Nyayika, ahankara, the I aspect or egoity, is the result of mithya jnana. Ahankara is the ascription of I-ness to the body, mind, intellect, feelings, etc. This sounds like Advaita Vedanta only. When the body, mind entity is assumed to be the self wants the body, mind complex to persist, to live long. It desires that it not be destroyed. The self acts through this body, mind entity and as a consequence bears the fruit of its action. This means punarjanma, repeated birth, further lives are required. So this is the cycle of birth and death, samsara. So long as there is identity with the body-mind complex, there is a desire, there is accumulation of karma and birth and death. So it is this identity that must be dissolved. When mithya jnana is removed, this identity dissolves. So liberation according to Nyaya is the dissolution of the bond between the real self and the real world. Because the body-mind complex is very real as the self itself. So the world will stay as it is. Bond between the self and the world dissolves. See, liberation for the Nyayikas is absolute cessation of pain, but there is no concept of ananda in moksha for the Nyayika. A liberated Atman will remain as a dravya without pain or pleasure and without consciousness also. On the other hand, the Nyayikas believe that birth is inseparably connected to an overwhelming amount of pain. In our normal day-to-day life, we are not aware of this. So this is the second type of mithya jnana. Wrong knowledge about the world. Because we don't have the right understanding about the world, we desire the objects of the world. We are attached to them. But when this mithya jnana is removed, we will come to see that all the objects of the world are really the causes of pain and suffering. So when we see this birth itself is pain, we will lose attachment towards it and we will desire to be free from it. So both types of mithya jnana must be eliminated. How to do this? Only way to do this is to meditate, to contemplate. Contemplate first of all on the nature of objects of the senses. Prasanjakshita. Prasanjakshita is to meditate, to contemplate on the objects of the senses, outside world. When you contemplate on it truly, their true nature comes to light. And when you understand their true nature, you will lose attachment to them. So the first step is to lose attachment to objects of the senses, to withdraw from sensual pleasures through a method of contemplating on them. Next, meditate on the nature of the body in relation to the self. Through meditation, through contemplation, you will realize that the body-mind is not you. When this realization dawns, the bond between the self and the body dissolves. So it is by discovering the true nature of the world on one hand, self on the other, that you can be free from samsara. Tattva-jnanat niśreyasa. Naiyayikas did not debate much on how true knowledge brings about moksha. They focused on how to get true knowledge. Once you get true knowledge, they figured the rest will sort of follow. So this is the broad general outline of the different aspects of Nyaya philosophy. There's still philosophy of language that is sort of omitted from this talk, but there was simply no time. But if there's any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Thank you, Manjushree. It was a wonderful session. I see a lot of questions coming up. Since we have only few minutes left, I think you can take a few of them. So I'll just read out one or two important questions that I feel. One is, of course, a basic question about how to approach the study of Navya-Nyaya and the sources. Any books suggested, or how to approach this? This is the 2 or 3 people have asked this question.
See, Navya-Nyaya, like I told you, is very, very complicated. If you have a very good understanding of Sanskrit, that will not be enough. If you have a very good understanding of English, that will not be enough. I mean, to access even the secondary sources, even to read the translations, it is a very technical language. So I think it has to be taught. The initial phase will be difficult, okay, but once you get the hang of it, then it becomes simple. But the very first step to get introduced to it, it's better if there's somebody who will help you out, who will teach you. You can't do it through books. It's not possible.
Another question is, to the Nayayika, does Ishvara possess the ability to willingly associate with a body like in an avatara? When Navya-Nyayika's texts invoke benedictory verses to Pauranika deities, should they be understood as addressed to Ishvara in the Nyaya sense?
Absolutely. See, Ishvara is self, as in he is almost identical. It's not a he in a sense that it's categorized under dravya, okay, as a substratum. So it's a concept more than a person in Nyaya philosophy. So substratum who can hold certain gunas and karma. Okay, this is the idea that is there. So willingly possessing a body, there is allowance for it within the system. He can, if he wishes to. So avatara concept can be accommodated within the Navya-Nyaya philosophy. But more than a person, I think he should be understood as substratum, the idea of dravya. Ishvara is a name that is given to the substratum which can function in a certain way. That is sort of how the idea works.
Okay. This is a 2-part question. I'll just combine 2 questions. How has Navya-Nyaya influenced Advaita Vedanta tradition? Second, could Navya-Nyaya have done better with any other language besides Sanskrit? I mean, you mentioned about Sanskrit being imperfect, so the Navya-Nyaya was developed in that context. And another part is, would you say that the difference of Siddhantas of various Indian darshanas is because of difference in the degree of importance given to each pramana?
It's actually quite interesting. First and foremost, influence to Advaita Vedanta, like I said, the Navya-Nyaya tools, the tools of the language, the logic, the epistemology. Epistemology is the pramana system. So all of this is what was borrowed from this system in all philosophies, in all disciplines. It's not just philosophy, also Alankara Shastra textbooks were written in the style of Navya-Nyaya. Dharma Shastras were written in the form of Navya-Nyaya, using this technical language. So not only the language, but the formulation of the logic, the step-by-step procedure, how you go from hypothesis to conclusion. So this is a step-by-step procedure which was also adopted. Along with that, the different pramanas was also adopted across the entire Indian knowledge systems. Apart from this, you also asked, is the difference in Siddhanta because of the importance given to different pramana? I don't think the pramana is, the emphasis in a pramana will make any difference to the Siddhanta. Of course, see, the Veda was an important pramana, not as important as inference. Vedanta will use Veda to substantiate their point, whereas Nyaya will use Anumana to substantiate their point. So they already have a Siddhanta in place. And now they're going to look at what supportive arguments to bring from where. So if Vedanta has relied on Shabda Pramana extensively, Nyaya gives more importance to rigorously proving that their position is correct through this formulation of logic. So I don't think it would have made a difference if they gave more importance to Shabda also, or if Vedanta gave more importance to if they gave more importance to Anumana, then they would have proved their points using that logical steps. That's pretty much what I think the difference is. But I don't think, the emphasis made much of a difference.
Can you also shed light on that, influence of Navya-Nyaya school on Vedanta tradition, and especially Advaita Vedanta tradition? But also a related question from another speaker is, what is the relationship of Nyaya with Advaita, Vishishta Advaita and Dvaita schools? How much they align or disagree with each other?
See, at the end of it, if you look at only the philosophy has not influenced the other systems, because the philosophy is realist. It considers not only the external world as real, okay, but they have a very specific system of how it is that you see the world, how you understand the world. This is all very specific to Nyaya. And the idea that, Atma is a Dravya, all of this is very specific to Nyaya Vaisheshika system. But at the end, you can also say that in liberation, according to Nyaya, the self is going to be free of the mithya jnana, that it is the body-mind complex. It is going to be free of pain and suffering. And this is the idea that is there in every system also. At the end of it, ultimately, how to be free of pain and suffering, how to remove this identification with the body-mind complex, which is the mithya jnana. And this is common across all the disciplines, almost. And one difference is where Nyaya will say there is no ananda. But, well, who knows? They say that it is just, without any, because they consider Ananda as also a guna, which will reside in the, they say that it's going to be without anything. It stays as it is. So, ultimately, how you describe the ultimate state is fine, but you're interested in how to get there as well. So philosophically, I think you can find similarities, you can find dissimilarities, but more than the philosophy of Nyaya, it was the tools that it developed that went into every other discipline. So like Advaita Siddhi, etc., it is written in the technical language, and the pramana theory, everybody is going to talk about what pramanas are accepted within this tradition, what are the most important pramanas, how to defend these are the things that have been adopted across all the other disciplines. So the only influence of Nyaya, so much in other philosophies and other knowledge systems is primarily the tools that it developed, not philosophy of it. So I think that's.
Yeah, one last question, since we are out of time. This is with regard to your reference to Ayurveda earlier in the lecture. Can you please explain what might be the classical thought where its methodology behind Ayurveda epistemology, which may be comparable as like logical positivism for Western post-industrial science?
Not entirely sure if I understood the question correctly, but I'll try to answer the best I can. What I referred to was how Vada Shastra is found in the Charaka Samhita also. So this Vada Shastra is basically, it's found, as in, see, we date Nyāyaśāstras to about 200 first and second century AD. That is like post in this century, basically. But earlier to that, you have Mahabharata talking about the system of argumentation. You have Arthashastra talking about the system of argumentation. So Charaka Samhita also, you actually have a very extensive discussion of Vada Shastra. Vada Shastra is basically what I refer to as, you know, the Chala, Vitanda, Jalpa, Vada. These are types of debates. There are types of debates which is the correct form of debate. What is an honest debate? What is the type of debate where winning is more important and where you're using wrong methods to prove your point? So trying to identify all of this is what comprises the Vada Shastra. So this does not have to do with logic or epistemology or any of that. When you're sitting down for a debate with another person, the rules that are involved, the rules that you must follow, the loopholes that you can possibly find in the other person's arguments, these are the things that form the Vada Shastra. So originally, see, in Gautama's Nyaya Sutras, the last almost six terms have to deal with Vada. Vada, Jalpa, Vitanda, Chala, all of these are things that have to do with the form of debate, the form of argumentation. So this is also found in Charaka Samhita, as it is found across other texts also, the literature of Sanskrit also. So Charaka Samhita did not examine, we're not talking about logic in Charaka Samhita, we're talking about Vada Shastra, the system of argumentation. So I'm not entirely sure if I can connect what you said into this argument.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Manjushree. We have received a lot of positive comments for this session, and we all are looking forward to the further lectures in the series. I hope you will be focusing on the Vaisheshika next, I believe. And we will soon schedule the dates. Viewers, we will soon make the announcements on our Twitter, Facebook, and others. We will release the flyers once we fix the date based on Manjushree's availability. On the behalf of Advaita Academy and all our viewers, again, thank you, Manjushree, for doing this session and for giving this very deep insights into the Nyāyaśāstra. I mean, we are simply, most of the people are simply unaware that such a strong logical tradition is even existing. Forget other things, right? So thank you again for agreeing to come on our show.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Nitin. Thank you so much.
Yes, we come to a conclusion of this session. Today evening, we have our weekends normal that we do, Weekend with Wisdom. We have a special guest in the evening, and he'll be speaking on Advaita Vedanta and how we can understand it today and how it's relevant today. So do not miss it at 5 p.m. Shri Gurubhyo Namah.